come out of the box, these 3 sets of lines, they're gonna be just wrapped up in wire tie on both. So when you undo all that, there's gonna be a set called a collector. Now these collectors are gonna be the green ones. And they're in here, normally it's numbered, you know, 1A, and this will say 1B.
These numbers are for young people, not for old.
Oh, yeah, well, see,
Even I cannot see them.
and here is another thing too, that a lot of times, they don't have the numbers on these. We have to put them on in the field, these little number tabs.
Yeah.
And what makes that difficult is it's already attached here. So you're now gonna have these lines coming out to know which one is 1 through 6. And the way I'll sometimes do it is I'll undo these, and with this lid off, I see which one is number 1, put a little number 1 tab. Now, I've been talking to them into doing this for the new ones, so that you know which one, because it's real important, because the one position has got to be one position all the way through. So when it pulls from the vessel 1 through cylinder 1, through needle 1, through recycle bin 1.
The other side is numbered? Or
So these fittings are already made here.
Oh, these are already connected. Yeah, they're already. Now, you may run
Because
across.
you must, if you do that, you first put this on, then this blue one, and then you press line till the end. So that they have a dead space in.
Yeah, because you'll realize you'll run into issues if you have some of that tube is pushed past the ferrule.
Yeah.
And what'll happen is you'll shoot almost straight across into here, because this 3-way distributor, they're real close. When all 3 of those lines are in, you push that one line almost straight across, you're gonna have trouble emptying the recycle bin when you get to that.
But if it is being over-tightened, we will have
No,
some leak, or
no,
we cannot over-tighten it?
Yeah, you can't over-tighten. If anything, it may run a little loose on you, and you just, I put them in pretty tight.
Okay.
Yeah, I give them all.
What about the other side? Is it numbered or color-coded?
Now, they're color-coded, your vessel lines. Now, they do this, sometimes they put numbers on them, just because some customers don't know the color code like we know the color code. So they'll put numbers to make it easy for the customer to put their probes.
So we can also put them in a vessel of water?
Yep.
And we push them one by one, just to
Well-
see which matches the which.
Well, this you should know by, you'll know by the color, because
Yeah.
these will run up into here.
Yeah.
Now, normally, brand new, you really don't take these covers off. So that's telling me all these will be all pre-numbered already for new ones.
For the new ones.
Yeah, the new ones. And the same with on those, the vessel lines. Now, replacement lines, they just go, they're strictly, they're not gonna be numbered, because really the only time you're gonna have a concern is if a customer does a replacement function or a pH function or dilution. Now, normally, if it is a replacement or a pH function or even that, there's still no concern which one is 1 or 2, because you're putting they want to put the exact same amount in all the vessels. So that's why these are very rarely ever numbered. Not too many customers ever use dilution. I know of only 2 that actually use a dilution. Replacement volume, nobody really ever uses replacement, because then that's going to have an impact on their dissolution that they run, because they got calculations saying, okay, I pulled 5 mils out at this pool, 5 mils out at this pool. If you're replacing with media, you're almost diluting your so for replacement, very rarely ever used. for even for, you know, pH meters. So a lot of times, these sit in waste. A lot of customers will stick these in a waste bottle, because whenever you do a system wash, it's gonna pull through the probes, yeah, and the waste is gonna be through here. And believe me, that system wash is gonna tell you a lot about how the system is running when you're doing, say for OQs on brand new, you should really probably never have an issue that much. But with and older ones, after you go back 6, 12 months, you know, couple of years, that's when you know, you run into I forgot what I was saying. Yeah, running the wash phase is doing a wash cycle before you do anything, before you even get into a PM. I'll run a wash and watch the function, because that wash function pretty much tells you right away if the customer leaves filters in those probes, I take the filters out, because I don't want filters interrupting, you know, the flow. And I'll stick them in their beakers. Usually they have a beaker on A and a B. They'll stick the 6 probes on each side. When you run a wash function, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to draw from both those. It's going to draw and brings them right into the pistons. I watch those levels, because right away, if you start seeing all uneven levels in there, you know already you're going to have an issue somewhere in the probe or the line, or maybe they got it caught in a drawer. And that's the biggest thing in the labs. These things will dangle down past, and somebody will open up the drawer here, not realize it, slam it shut, and now you've just put a crease in every one of those lines. And that could be a killer for you, because then right away it's gonna have a harder time when it draws. Now it's going to create even more vacuum, because now it's got to get past that kink. And a lot of us will carry wire or a wire that we get, because most kinks are always going to happen right at the, right down here, close, because this is the most handled lines, are these right here. Normally those green lines, once they're in, nobody ever touches that. And the same, when these replacement lines are usually sitting in a waste, nobody usually messes with them. But these right here, they're grabbing every single day, multiple times during the day. Sometimes they'll hang like this while they're sitting in a beaker. Person opens and closes that door, they now just creased all these. But running a system wash is the first thing you do, is a telltale sign. The first time, it brings them down. And I do a fast check to make sure all those levels are pretty even all the way around. Then what it's going to do is it's going to push them through. It's going to push them through these collector lines. They're going to push right up and through the needles into the recycle tray, because this is part of the wash function. It's going to clean out everything. So then it's sitting there in that reservoir back there. Then it's going to click, and the next function, it's going to draw it out again. But when it draws it out again, it's drawing it out from the recycle tray back into here. There's your next sign to look for. And I look to see, oh, all of a sudden one's not even barely filling up. So I note that all to myself, which ones, because then when it's pulling from the recycle tray, it should pull everything it just pulled from the vessel lines. So that you should see, and it's gonna actually, those pistons are gonna go down lower, because it needs to empty, it wants to empty everything. So it's not only gonna grab the 20 mils or so that it just did for the first ones through the vessels, it's going to go down even lower. And I look at all the levels, and if all of them are pretty much even, then you know you don't have an issue with any of the recycle lines or the recycle tray. It's pulling all that sample out. If you start seeing stagger, you know, okay, where's the rest of it? That means the rest of it is still sitting there in the tray, and that means there could possibly be a clog somewhere from that tray back to here. So that's more than likely You know it's not an issue with the collector lines, these middle ones, because you've already gotten the sample out and in there. Now it's a tray. It's normally these red lines, they're your recycle lines, because the tray's got an issue because some customers don't wash. Some may not even have recycle on. So that means whatever media is sitting in that tray, and as it evaporates, if it's a buffer solution, the salts get down in there and it starts clogging those lines. So a good thing is,
That goes to the tubes.
yeah, these white lines right here, they're gonna run down these sides, they come up through the needle, they're the needle lines. It's these right here are your red.
Okay.
And this is the biggest problem is water sits in here with their media, and if it doesn't all get out when you do a wash, and you've noticed you've got you've got some sitting in here, that's telling me, okay, man, there's got to be a clog in this, say, number 4 position or number 3. So somewhere in from here to here, you know, is something clogged. Or you'll look down here and you'll see all the white dried up salts. So then what I'll do is I'll start putting hot water in here and run empty cycle. There's on here, and I'll show you when we turn this all on, there's an empty. Empty is strictly wants to empty this.
Into this.
And sometimes hot water, you'll see where it's trying to pour into the cylinder and all of a sudden it breaks loose. Then it all fills up. Okay, you got that unclogged. But, you know, and again, this is after it's been a year, 2 years old. You know, customers, they just want to run it, and as soon as something happens, you know, they start screaming for you. And sometimes these are easy things to even tell the customer over the phone. If there's a way that, oh man, I don't want to spend half a day driving to do a 30-minute fix and then got to drive all the way. That sometimes, you just need to run hot water, but hey, for us, you know, we're gonna run down there, you know, and give this a quick fix. But that would be the second function of a wash. Second time it's gonna bring, you check those levels, and that's telling you how clean all this is, or how free flowing all this is. And then the next push.
Second, for a system wash, do you use any cleaning solution or just clean?
You can use a soapy water, and I use whatever soap or something that they may have. But being new, I wouldn't. But when I know it's, and if you
For all systems,
look,
okay.
if you look at the lines now, right away a sign is it starts getting a little whitish. Or sometimes you see like brown or green specks. That's because then now they're getting some type of mold, or, you know, bacteria is growing in the line. And you know right away that when you do a wash and you see the tops of all those pistons and they're like yellow, pink, you know, depending on what drug they were using, or black or green, that's telling me they're not even bothered doing a wash. So then I already know I'm in for a long day, because it's going to be a mess. And you get a lot of customers, you have a hard time convincing, oh, I got to replace all these lines. Oh, well, to them,
Expensive.
if it's not broke, don't fix. You know, that's their. So you got to live with, you know, what they give you, or what they allow you to do. But that wash function is going to tell you a lot already right up front when you first get to that instrument. And then the next thing I would do before doing any PM or anything, I do a 7.5 volume check. I mean, I don't weigh anything. I'll throw a set of tubes in that front row. I'll do an auto function from here. I'll do a 7.5 mil just to see. And I'll let it, you know, pull up, draw, do its function, and just to look to see if all my sample tubes now look even. Because then again, if I have them, they look like they're bouncing around, you already know, well, there's gonna be one line that's gonna give me, you know, an issue. But these are good things to know in advance before you start doing a PM and pulling it apart, because then you know, this is what I gotta look at. I already know there's an issue with either line 3 or 4 over here, I got an issue over here. But doing that initial wash, that's your telltale right there, is gonna tell you if you're gonna run into all kinds of issues and problems.
Yeah, you just, sorry for interrupting, you said for any crease nearby here, you use some wire to fix it?
Yep, some of us out in the field, we use that heavy gauge guitar string. That little guitar, the heavier gauge, because once you push it through and you get it through, and I'll go past the crimp, and I'll just take my 2 fingers and I'll rub it like this, back and forth with the wire inside, and you pull that wire out, and then it's pretty much gets rid of the crease, you know, to just help you with flow. That's why I take the filters out, 'cause sometimes customers leave the filters in the probes. And, you know, I went and had to do, there was a volume issue with the customer, I had to do a quick repair right down the road, run all the way there, and the first thing I noticed, all the filters were in there. And then come to find out, half of them don't even know to take them out and change them. Oh, well, I thought you pulled them out. No, I didn't pull them out. Well, they're using the same filter. Time and run again. And I pulled all the filters, and everything was fine. Nice, level. I said, you can't just leave filters in.
Yeah,
You
the
know?
problems with filters are not only with these systems, also with HPLCs and everything.
Yep.
Because if the tube is all grown up inside, so probably it's also the
You got
the filter.
cross-contamination, too.
Nice is the
For
one
8L6.
from Teflon. When you see when it changes color, then you just exchange it. But if it's
Yeah.
metal one, then it's hard to see.
Oh, okay, yeah. But, here, what we'll do is, we'll turn this thing all on as if it's, you know, you're just setting it up. And I guess some of you know,
Will it blow?
is the first things you're gonna turn on is your pumps. And you'll hear, and, you know, you wanna hear the click, click of all the pinch valves, you know, on each side. You hear that fan? Because you need to have the pumps on first, so when you turn on the auto sampler,
Detects the pump.
it understands, you know, the two. And that's it, as long as, you know, for new systems, it would never, really shouldn't have that issue, because it's already gonna know, because it was programmed here for that. Let's see, we don't have anything in the way.
This going back. I will take this with me in my luggage,
See, and you heard it.
and I will throw those ones through the window.
That's one set of A needles going up and down, and B needles. So now it's done all its little mechanical checks.
Mechanical gun.
In other words, it's check the pinch valves in this one when you turn it on, and check the pinch valves in that one when you turn it on. And when you turn this on, you'll hear those pinch valves. It runs a forward and a back, because that's one of its functions, and it wants to know its motor functions, and that's sort of its self-test.
Check
That
all the movements.
checks
and
all the
sensors
movements
and-
to make sure, yeah, that everything is good. All right. So let's log in.
31415. Why you don't use the short one?
What's that?
Why you don't use the short one password?
Oh, the
Four-
pi?
31415.
Yeah, that's pi.
3, 4 or something.
3-1.
31415.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something we should all know. Never
Yeah, it's
tell
only
the customer that.
yeah.
Because that's our, we call that our
Secret.
back door to get in. I'll always use Distek because if a customer has a problem and they say all of a sudden now they can't log on under anything because somebody at one time got in there, what do you mean wrong password? I guess I might have to use that, right?
Let someone to do it, you know.
Maybe they, show me how to address it.
You write your procedure. Write me down. You know.
3141 or what?
The one it's in manual it doesn't work. So
3141.
write your procedure.
It's pi.
Try it now.
It's not the same thing. I
3,
mean,
1.
that unit I'm fixing is crazy. It's not the regular ones. You know. Like,
That's just for that or for all machines?
write you down your let's say log off.
that's
It's
something-
not in the manual.
We would all know,
Yeah, but it's not in the
never
manual.
want to tell a customer.
El paso es 3110461.
Yes,
And it's valid for all instruments.
all
Yeah.
instruments. Because normally they're all shipped Distek.
Yeah. Some with
And,
F-Total, some.
Now you have some where you run across where customer accidentally got in there into a user field, messed up password, now they can't even log on. We ourselves will tell them to try Distek under the Distek, but we will never tell them, even over the phone, we'll go there. And I don't even let them know. Sometimes I have to play around like it's just something involved. You know, like I 6100, I'll pull the front cover off to make it look like I'm adjusting something, and when they turn their back, oh, there we go. You know, yeah, I use that because then that'll get you in, and then you can go and redo the Distek one. That's the first thing I would do. Go back under the Distek, create that password again, put it in, then log out of that, and then try going back in as Distek. And then, once that, then you can, you know, yeah, go ahead, let them have their Distek password, but. Yeah, and that's good for all our instruments. If anything, you can't get in, Distek's not working, because either they accidentally hit some wrong buttons, then you can't get in, then you have to use that 31415. In fact, I was out in the field for almost 6 months before I even realized that. No one ever told even me. No, I know half of the field service guys out there right now probably don't know that. They're gonna run across it one day and they're gonna start calling around, oh man, now I can't get in. Oh, yes, you can. And that's how I learned. I just go, I says, what do you mean? It's a series of numbers. And Jose was giving it to me over the phone, and I tried it. Let me see, are we in wastes? I'll see they're floating. Well, they're doing a little floating, but I don't know if it's going to draw up because they have the weight of the probes on the end. But these lines are just. But I think once it pulls for the first time, they're still a little floating, but. Now, what I normally do before I, do any of that, excuse me. Okay, I run over to my admin. Here's system. Okay, and this right here is going to tell me when I see the 2.8, 1.7, of course I know this is version 4.0. That's typical line volumes for line 1 and line 2. And let me just, here A, B, and they're set the same, you know, for both those. Now configuration. This is where you can adjust your date, your time. Make sure it actually says the serial number that is the actual serial number of the unit you're installing.
Of this unit.
What's that?
Of this unit.
Of this unit. Yep. I always check it because you never know how many times I've seen where they've made a mistake on the test report. They should never make the mistake of putting the wrong board. If they're doing two at the same time and they accidentally switch board, that's kind of a rare case, but I always check. But now here's the addresses. This right here is telling me that this unit was connected to 2500s, two 2500 baths. Because normally in where it says AB, it knows, okay, address 1 and 2 is going to be pumps 1 and 2. It's separate address over here. So the last time this thing was actually used, it was connected to a 2500. There you could run through, say 25, there's 2100, 6100, 6300, 71, 73, which doesn't exist yet. 2500 for NA. You need to set this to NA before you do your PM and your OQs, your qualification, because what will happen is if you don't, it's constantly going to ask you every time you start one of your OQs,
Where's the bath?
where the bath, it wants you to start the bath first. Even though you may not even have the thing plugged in, it doesn't know that. It still thinks that there's baths because you told the addresses that they're there. Okay, so you want to NA. Now, more than likely, if it was brand new, it would already be NA. If the customer ordered this with 2 baths, you may have to go in there and put the 2 baths in whatever models. Now, normally, people are buying these today, they're buying them with 2100, 2500s or 7100s. But occasionally, they'll get a pre-owned autosampler, or they'll get an autosampler now with already existing baths. The cables will only connect to ours, but they may use them for somebody else's baths. Well, then that's, hey, there's no connection, so they're going to have their baths already up and running at temperature and all with these probes in, and you're just going to start it from here. So there's no bath control of anybody else's but Distek's in here. All right, so now that I know that that's good to go. Okay, I've already, checked my date, and here our flush sample purge idle, they should never change that, and that's in our books. It should be in your manual that's auto function. That's an auto function. So when you use the auto function directly from the screen, that's the function it's going to use when you run, because and I'll show you on I call this like the manual screen. On the manual screen, there's 2 ways of sample. There's auto sample, and then there's just sample. Just sample doesn't know that it needs to fill the lines and purge and flush and all that before it samples. You're just telling it to sample 7.5. So if these lines are empty, it's just going to sample 7.5, and you won't get hardly anything in those tubes, because you've lost the first few mils. They're all sitting in your lines. That we use. Probably the only time we really use that function is when we're doing like line volume calculations, because then we manually are purging the lines, and we want to weigh and we want to see exactly how much in line volume there is. And that usually you're doing that is if you've you've changed a set of lines, vessel lines. You're taking the old vessel, because they're either broken or bad, and you're replacing them. Or if you're replacing, you've got a system that you've got to replace. Most common is they want all three of these replaced. Very rare